Good evening. Welcome to St. Joseph the Worker Parish and our music ministry Cantor Workshop for 2025. A special thanks to Michael and Karen for their assistance tonight, and to our guest speaker, Sandy Hartman, for her contribution to tonight's workshop. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones so that we may be attentive to our study this evening. Now, if I may invite Karen forward, let us sing together, Led by the Spirit, which is found on page 8 in the bulletin, and we will sing together verses 1 and 2. If you are able, please stand. This evening, Melissa gave you a prayer that, I'm sorry we did not get this run off for you and laminated, but we're going to do that for you in the future. This is a cantor's prayer that Melissa came across a while ago, and let us pray together. O Lord, bless me, your servant, whom you have called to minister at your holy altar. Grant that what I sing with my lips, I may believe in my heart, and what I believe in my heart, I may show forth in my life. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. May be seated. And thank you to Karen for accompanying us tonight. I want to begin by discussing the role of the cantor, and we'll make this as collaborative as we can. So you're cantors, you have been for a while. What do you do? You are all shy. Mary Beth?
We lead the congregation.
Or leaders of the congregation. In song. Cheryl?
We proclaim the word of the psalm. We proclaim the psalm.
Proclaim the psalm.
We encourage everyone to sing.
Encourage everyone to sing. I have a couple other things to add to that, although all of those were on my list. Some of the various roles that you fill as a cantor. The first thing is as the greeter. You welcome those to worship. You are, as Mary Beth and Cheryl mentioned, facilitators of the music. You are the psalmist. And you're also a worshiping part of the assembly of the faithful. And as Mary Beth mentioned, the cantor is a leader. But when we're sustaining people singing, the cantor's voice can't overly dominate, right? Singing of the assembly's voice is what should always be heard. We are facilitators. And so, because, realistically, we are striving as a parish and as a church for full and active participation of the assembly, that in all aspects of liturgy. Just a little bit of an aside, in this sort of new role that I have as Director of Music and Liturgy, that's sort of coming a lot more into focus, is that how do we foster that full and active participation of the congregation across all aspects of liturgy. It's a little bit eye-opening and a little bit daunting when you realize the scope of that question. So there are a few things that you have to do from a very practical standpoint, right? You've got to set the pitch, the tempo sometimes. You have to summon people into worship, summon them into song, indicate maybe that another verse is coming, particularly if your accompanist goes off on some crazy interlude, and only you can interpret what might happen next. You might need to give them a gentle, "He's ready now," and bring them back in, right? But realistically, once the assembly develops their skills and knows the music that we're being asked to sing, we have the opportunity to back off and to allow them their voice. So our focus tonight, of all of the roles that we discussed, the primary role that we're going to talk about tonight is that of the psalmist. And that's actually why Sandy is here this evening. She is here to talk to us about how to prepare to proclaim the word. Before we get to that, there are three brief things that I want to touch on with you. First of all, the announcements. How did I do? Right? Thanks. I did try very hard to set a positive example this evening. So what kind of things did you notice in that welcoming announcement?
You smiled.
I did smile. That's because I can't see you, because I put up my glasses on. I can't read anything that's on my paper.
You looked at everybody.
I did look at you. Well, as best I could without being able to see.
You spoke clearly and joyfully.
Clearly and what?
Joyfully.
Joyfully.
And at a slower pace.
And at a slower pace. Yeah, so all of those things are important. We have a tendency, sometimes I think, when we're in church, to put our reverence above literally everything else. And I am certainly not here to tell you that that's a bad thing, or that we want to be irreverent or not reverent in what we do. But watch Father Nick and Father Michael at Mass, right? You'll see Father Michael in particular, it's hard to get the smile off of his face during Mass. You can tell with him just how much he loves the liturgy, how much he loves being a priest. Father Nick as well, and Father Martin as well. They love what they do. They love being here, facilitating our faith journey, right? And it shows on their face. And we have the same opportunity to do that in our role as cantors, as leaders of congregational worship in our little corner of the liturgy, right? Which admittedly isn't so little, right? Okay. So find your stage voice. There are some things that come up sometimes with the announcements. As singers, I think really all of you do a really good job of projecting your voices when you sing, but sometimes not so much when you speak. So try to find that actor inside you, right? And proclaim these announcements so that they can be heard, keeping in mind that you are the first voice that is heard during the Mass. Well, the first official voice, except for that crying child that comes from the other side, or the people who are having a conversation about meatloaf in the back, or something like that. Right? We are the welcome to the Mass. Right? And so that joy that we all feel at getting to having the ability to come here and sing for Mass and facilitate people singing, let that joy come out. And that joy of being able to be a leader in worship, let that joy come out in your voice. And again, not suggesting that you go like crazy over the top, but just allow people to know that you're happy to be there and you hope they are too. We as a parish are not in a community that is growing by leaps and bounds. We're not in Cranberry. And we're also in a fairly tight area, right? 8 churches part of our parish group, and yet Point Breeze isn't far away, Monroeville isn't far away, Homestead isn't far away. And so when someone comes into our parish, we want to make sure that they feel welcome, that they feel the joy that we feel here at St. Joseph the Worker. And in those ways, we want to invite them to return, to be with us again next week. So again, just keep that in mind when you do this. The second thing is, if you notice during the hymn, well, 2 things happened. First of all, I came up here without a worship aid. Please don't do that. I wasn't trying to model that behavior. But I came up here without a worship aid, and thankfully Sandy bailed me out. But either way, I stayed here in the microphone for about the first phrase. You all knew this hymn, and you sang back to me. We sang together, as the announcement said, right? We sang together our opening hymn. And realistically, as soon as you hear those voices coming back to you, you have the opportunity to just take a step back. Please don't do that at St. John Fisher. Because if you do it like I did it, the next step that you hear will be your head crashing off the floor, all right? But you do have the opportunity to take a little bit of a step back and also to maybe lower your voice just a little bit. And I will tell you, I had promised myself I wasn't going to point anybody or single anybody out for anything, but I'm just going to mention this. For those of you who cantor the 10 o'clock Mass with the choir, pretty regularly, as soon as the opening hymn starts, the cantor moves over to where Sandy's currently sitting and allows the choir and the congregation to sing. At the 4 o'clock for Sunday Masses with the contemporary group, Sean has become sort of the designated cantor for that group, and he makes the opening announcements and then goes down and sings with the group, with the ensemble. And there's no one in the ambo. And I will just tell you that generally speaking, the live stream isn't watching the cantor, so they won't be watching an empty podium at that point. They're watching the procession come in. So feel free to back away. Most of the time, I make a lot of effort to make sure that the opening hymn is familiar. Because one of the things that happens is, I've sort of noticed over the years, that if the people sing the opening hymn well, it seems to carry through to the rest of the Mass. If they don't sing the opening hymn well, that may also carry through the rest of the Mass. I'm not sure why that happens, but it does seem to happen. So most of the time it's going to be a familiar hymn, which will give you an opportunity to let them find their voice. So I'll also mention to you that at the end of the night, there is a packet of information. It looks like this and even includes the new parish logo on it. And it is for those of you who received or maybe still have the self-guided workbook that we created in 2021. This is based on that. There have been some modifications to it. There have been some updates and things that have been added to this. You'll get those actually at the end of the night tonight. It really is a self-study, so you really don't, we're not going to spend the evening going point by point through this. But I would ask you to look it over and read through it well. It really talks about your role as cantors. It talks about preparation to come in and sing for Mass, and then it goes through the Mass, step by step. Every musical element of the Mass is addressed and gives some hopefully helpful pointers as to how to maybe carry yourself through that portion of the Mass, okay? So those will get to you at the end of the Mass tonight. So what I'd like to do now is to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Sandy Hartman has been a lector at St. Joseph the Worker Parish and then previously at St. Maurice Parish for quite a few years, for a long time. And many of us have had the pleasure of listening to Sandy proclaim the word during Mass. Sandy's also a member of the lector team, which is one of the subcommittees of our newly formed liturgy committee, as well as being involved in, I'm not even sure how many different ministries Sandy participates in and is active in our parish. I invited Sandy here today to discuss how she prepares to lector for Mass, what steps she takes prior to arriving for liturgy, and how that preparation helps her to move from reading the scripture to proclaiming the word. And it is our hope that you will find some useful information in the thoughts that Sandy shares with us today, and that will help you to prepare to proclaim the word through the Psalms. And so at this time, would you help me greet Sandy Hartman?
Hello, all. This is an unusual side for me to be on, but also it's kind of an unusual thing for me to do because I'm used to practicing readings, but not so much public speaking. So bear with me. And I also do not feel like I'm all that well organized, but I'm going to try. As I was preparing for this, when Norm asked me, and thank you for asking me, Norm, I meant to say that first off, but thank you for having me and all of you, your patience while I muddle through what I just thought might be some interesting points that I wanted to share with you because of my deep admiration and respect for you, for what you do, for you have a very special ministry. And I sang in the choir. Just a tiny bit of background real quick. I joined St. Maurice and was brought into the full initiation of the church, of the Catholic Church here at that baptismal font 35 years ago this Easter Vigil. I sat over there and heard these angelic voices over here helping to bring me in to the joy and the fulfillment of what this has been for me. And so in doing that, I sang in the choir, and that was wonderful, and I sang with a couple of you here, actually. And I know what you do. I know how much it takes. I know how much energy you expend. People don't realize, I was talking to Cheryl when I came in, people have no realization when you do a 2-hour rehearsal, how much that takes out of you, and you go home at 9 o'clock and you've had a full day, and it's a lot. And when you do a special event, it is truly the most energy expending thing I can think I've done, because it is not only the keeping that going while you're singing, but also the adrenaline, I think, that kind of wears you out by the time it's all over. So just know that you all mean quite a lot to me and quite a lot to our parish. And we are very, very blessed to have as many wonderful voices as we have, and you as leaders are really remarkable, and I appreciate each one of you. I wanted to, I'm going to turn my paper over and over again, I'm sorry about that. I think ultimately the Spirit is the one who calls any person to any ministry. I know the Holy Spirit has called me to do this and has told me when it was time for me to rest my voice over here and to try that out over there. And I think that because he has called each and every one of us, we're halfway there. I mean, just by his ask, I think that we are where we're supposed to be. And I also feel that our ministries as proclaimers and psalmists is deeply connected to our relationship with God, with our own spiritual journey. I know that it's part of who I am, and I know by the way you sing that it is part of your spiritual life and spiritual journey, and enhances that. And I feel that when we are doing what we're doing for the parish, we're not only enhancing it for the assembly and for our dear congregation, but for ourselves. I know I feel differently coming here. When you come just as part of the congregation, when you come and sit in the pews, it's a whole other feel than when you are doing what our ministry here up here, and each part of that is a different part of our spiritual need, our fulfillment of our spiritual need, I feel. When Norm asked me kind of how I prepare, I really had to stop and think, because it becomes kind of natural for us to do what we've been doing for quite some time, so it just kind of falls into place somehow or another, and by the time we get here, I think, okay, we're ready to go. But really, I know that for me, a lot goes into it in the course of the week before I'm scheduled. I try to pray the readings. I try to work on meditating over my readings. And I always include the psalm that you're going to do that coming week, because the psalm, the responsorial, I feel, is so connected. We talked, Norm and I, briefly on the phone about in a couple of weeks, the fourth Sunday of Lent, I'm scheduled to read, and it's the book. It's a reading from the book of Joshua, and it's when God has allowed the Israelites to then finally move into the land of Canaan, the promised land of Canaan, and it's been a long time for them, and they have not been able to celebrate the Passover for many years, and so now they've been given manna. They've allowed to celebrate the Passover. There's so much that's coming from the land of Canaan for them. There is the yielding of the produce and grain and all of those things that the Israelites are so finally thrilled about and finally can express. And then comes taste and see the goodness of the Lord, that you're going to sing after I read this, one of you, or many. Taste and see the goodness of the Lord. Just in that attachment, in that connection to that first reading is phenomenal. When I read over the readings and then I look at the psalm, it always has something, it always ties it in and connects it. The second reading generally does too. I have a little trouble with that. It's usually Paul, and you know how he is, and how those paragraphs go with no paragraphs, and on and on. And so I have my love-hate relationship with St. Paul, let me tell you. But as a lector, we have, yes. But I think that the connection between the readings, especially the first reading in the psalm, and half of my heritage is Jewish, and so the Old Testament readings I've known about them longer, and I studied that a little longer, and the psalm is so special to me from my upbringing, and the Psalms of David and the other lyricists have phenomenal messages for us. I think that the psalm to me is the icing on the cake, even though it falls between the readings. It we perform an act of ministry within the Mass. And I think for some of the community, we have to bear in mind, for some of the community, that psalm and that scripture that we're proclaiming may be the only interaction with the Bible that they have. And I think that's a huge responsibility for us to have, and I think that we want to touch people the best we can because we have them captured for that time, and God is speaking through us. We're the vehicle. And so I feel that those words that you are singing, and I can't tell you how many times the psalm is so special to whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm feeling at the time, whoever I'm missing, whatever is on my heart. You start that psalm and it just moves me. As a lector, when you do it, and I get to sit there right underneath you and feel it even, but I don't like that we don't have the lyrics, the entire, I know I want to, you deserve to have that little bit of solo time, and there's so many of them that I know that I have to sit there and just kind of sing along really softly, because the refrain is fabulous, but I'm afraid that they're not catching every word that they need to catch, because every word in those psalms can be something that we need to hear, a balm, soothing and just uplifting. And the psalms are such a model for prayer, I feel. You can use the psalms in such a remarkable way to pray. I think they help us express emotions that we have when we're trying to pray, and it gives us many different emotions to deal with. I was just thinking of some off the top of my head when I was thinking about the different emotions that they deal with. And there's the lamenting. And for instance, God, my God, why have you abandoned me? Psalm 22, just that lament. And you're going to get ready to sing that to me soon. My very favorite time of year, Lent. You help people with this journey. And so it is, and we have new candidates. I sit on the OCIA team. Thank you, Mary Beth. Together, we sit on that team. And it is super important that our new candidates and catechumens know what joy this brings, what joy liturgy brings, and what enhancement and enrichment it brings to their life, because they have been tapped on the shoulder by that Holy Spirit, and they're going to come here and we're going to baptize them and confirm them. And that night is unlike any other to me. It's my real birthday to me. And so I want each and every person that comes into our church to feel that same way. And when I went through that, I felt when I was stepping off of this, I didn't want to leave the sanctuary, because then I was afraid that the real feeling would come back, the real world would touch me. But right after that baptism, when I felt nothing was important, nothing, but just that feeling of being here with the Spirit. And when I got to taste Jesus for the first time, that was such a remarkable experience, and still is to this day. But every one of our candidates and catechumens will feel that, because you will help them feel it that way. We will help them together feel that way because of the joy in our hearts to do what we do, to proclaim what we proclaim, to enjoy and feel the joy of our ministries. I talked about lamenting. There's the Psalms of Praise, sing to the Lord a new song. Petition, be merciful, Lord, for we have sinned. I petition the Lord, and we all do, and so he wants us to. And these Psalms are the help for us to do those things, I think. psalms of thanksgiving, give thanks to the Lord, his love is everlasting. And your singing brings those to life. So just know how important your role is. I think that it also is important that they help us to bring the joys and sorrows of our life and our struggles and God's affirming message. And there's all those glimmers in the Psalms that they offer the encouragement of our prophetic Messiah. And those are all such important messages that you convey with song. I think that you do an amazing job, but I feel that you and I are a partnership and that we work together in bringing the best liturgy experience that we can. It makes me feel very joy-filled to be able to come here and proclaim that word to folks. And we all do this, the machinations of preparation, I'm sure, our enunciation and the punctuation and and projecting. And I try to be really conscious of that, as I know all of you do, but as Norm was saying, the speaking is different than the singing. And when I know that there are older people, somebody with the crying baby is in the back, and I want them to hear that. I want them to hear every word that's coming from us. So I try to be really conscious of that projection and feeling like they want to hear what we're saying, what we're offering. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. I wondered if you had any thoughts about us working together. I think that it's important that we feel that we're connected. I like that feeling. And the choir, like I said, is so special to me. And the cantor role is really very, very important. And so I would like to know that we're kind of got that little bit of connection going on between us. And I hope that other lectors feel that way too. In us working on this new lector subcommittee for the liturgy committee, I think that we'll talk more about that and try to see if we can get everybody feeling like it's the joy-filled message that's the important thing. And that's what I have for you.
I'm going to actually pass this out to you, and maybe if you wouldn't mind. If you notice, Sandy had a book with her up here, and you may have seen these before. They are a workbook for lectors, gospel readers, and proclaimers of the word. And our parish provides these for all of the lectors each year. And the page that Crystal is passing out for you right now is the page for the reading and responsorial psalm that Sandy was referencing, the reading from Joshua. And if you take a look at the way that this is structured, let me just give you a little bit of an example. Like, it has all, first of all, on the left-hand side, you get that history, right? The Israelites are now in the promised land. So it suggests bringing a sense of joy and suspense to your reading. What's going to happen now, right? So this book really gives a lot of sort of helpful hints to the lectors as they prepare. And if you take a look at the reading itself, there's bold print in places where it sort of suggests that you put some emphasis on the right syllables, okay? To help sort of really proclaim the word. And if you notice, when you get down to the section where it says on the day after Passover, It recommends decreasing your pace and continuing to build interest, and I'm giving away all of Sandy's secrets. My apologies for that. But there's a lot of help in here, and I'm wondering if going forward, it might be useful for us as cantors to also have access to these books. Now, I will tell you, if you look down below, the responsorial psalm is there in a smaller font, and it just says on the side, the only thing that it says about it is for meditation and context. So this particular resource isn't really designed specifically for our use as cantors in proclaiming the responsorial psalm, but I thought I would show this to you because I think that the approach that it takes can be useful for us in our preparation. And I also wanted to give that to you because the responsorial psalm is listed there. So if we take the approach of sort of looking at all of this beforehand, let's take a look at this Psalm 34, taste and see, that's on the handout. It is, as you all know, one of the most frequently used responsorial psalms, and there are countless musical settings available. So then the question becomes, how do we go about selecting a musical version of this responsorial psalm that really speaks to us personally? So I ask you, what factors do you consider, or might you consider going forward, to help you decide which of the many, many tasty phrases that you might want to sing? Yeah.
Check if the verses are correct.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point, Sarah, because, taste and see, Psalm 34 comes up a number of times in a number of different contexts, right? As Sandy mentioned, the responsorial psalm is paired with that first reading, which is paired with the gospel. Like, what happens here when they're putting this together, my understanding is, like, they've got the gospels, they're going along the book of Luke, and here is the reading for today. Okay, what Old Testament reading sort of echoes that or foreshadows that or whatever, and that's how they decide what that first reading is going to be. Okay, great.
Just gonna grab the stink bug right here that's gonna... Sorry, must be smart.
It's stink bugs. Must be St. Mars. Thank you. Multi-purpose. But so because the first reading is selected to go with the gospel, and the gospel may be very different from what it was the last time, right? So sometimes there are different verses that are selected for now than would be selected maybe during Eastertide or during Advent or whenever. So Sarah's point is very good. You have to make sure that the verses are the same. Just a little side note about that. If you go with a paraphrase, if the paraphrase doesn't go too terribly far away, I'm really okay with that. But please do try to make sure that the version that you select has all the verses that we're looking for. A perfect example this past weekend, Be With Me, Lord, When I Am in Trouble, was the responsorial psalm. The most familiar one to many of us is the Marty Hagen, Be With Me, Lord, When I Am in Trouble, which is missing one of the verses. So unless you feel so inclined to put that verse in there, it's again, if it was used over the weekend, that's fine. It's not a problem. But it's from the standpoint of the text, it may not be the best option, again, for that particular one. Again, not a problem if it was used, just say, okay? So when you take a look at this responsorial psalm, there are a number of things. It might be musicality. It can be accessibility. And that can mean either for you, it may be too high, it may be too low. You may not feel that you have sufficient preparation time to prepare this. For example, some of the ones in Spirit and Psalm, the more contemporary ones, the rhythms are very challenging. And sometimes you feel almost like an auctioneer trying to get all the words in. If your time is tight that week, then from a practical standpoint, that may not be the best psalm for you to select for that week. Does it set the right tone for what you kind of want to convey in this psalm? So as we're discerning the proper version, a few questions or a few maybe steps to take. If you have a copy of, actually everybody has access to the readings. If you have a congregational journey song, they're all in there. They're also all online at USCCB. You can go and you can Google the daily readings and you can see what all of the readings are for the day, okay? And if you would like for us to include links for the readings on the Google Drive, just let me know. I will be happy to include those in there so that you can take a look. So take a look, particularly as Sandy mentioned, the first reading and the gospel. What is the theme of those readings? And what feelings do they invoke? Again, as Sandy mentioned, the Psalms are very powerful and in many cases very emotional. And so what feelings are invoked by this psalm? And how does the psalm relate back to the rest of the readings? What are the key words in that responsorial psalm? And I will just say, from a practical perspective, when you take a look at what they've done with the book of Joshua, putting sort of bold print on certain words, it is easy enough for me to read. The Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have removed the reproach of Egypt from you." Right? That's easy for me to put that kind of emphasis on certain words. It is a little harder to do that when you're singing, right? Be with me, Lord, when I am in trouble. Doesn't really work as well, right? But if you can get yourself into that mindset and that emotional mindset of what am I trying to convey, that feeling will come out in your singing, okay? Sandy also mentioned to you about the various types of psalms. Sandy must have looked at my notes, but psalms of praise, songs of lamentation. And actually, the packet that you'll get from Melissa at the end of the evening lists 7 different types of responsorial psalms and gives examples of them and sort of kind of how they sort of make you feel when you read those psalms or when you sing those psalms. And it does kind of give a little bit of clarity to it when you start to think in terms of really what emotions are trying to be evoked by this particular responsorial psalm. So the bottom line question for you is, what message do you want to convey when you sing and when you proclaim this responsorial psalm? Another question that you always need to ask is, like, what season are we in here? There are always seasonal concerns. We are in Lent, so you don't necessarily want the bubbly, joyous, bouncing off the walls responsorial psalm until Fourth Sunday, when you have Laetare Sunday, right? And you can sort of lighten up a little bit. And you want to get a little bit of a joy back in there to get us the rest of the way through Lent, okay? So realistically, the question becomes, which of the musical settings, the vast number of musical settings that you have available to you, and let's face it, we have, right? Respond and Acclaim, Spirit and Psalm, the Guillemot, Journey Song, Big Brown, the choral praise edition that some of the choir folks refer to as Big Brown. You may have a gather hymnal out there. You may have access to the internet with Francesca La Rosa's thousands of responsorial psalm settings. All of these things are available to you. So how do you figure out which one it is? Well, honestly, I can't answer that for you. Because the reality of it is that you have to go into these readings. You have to discern what this reading says to you, and then determine what you want to convey back to the congregation when you are in the ambo proclaiming the psalm. And once you've sort of done that little bit of homework, then maybe one of those many, many versions that you have available to you will be the obvious choice for you, okay? At the very least, that level of discernment may eliminate some possibilities from you, okay? And then, if nothing else, that level of preparation will give you a deeper meaning and a deeper understanding of what it is that you're proclaiming in that responsorial psalm. And I really do think that that will translate for you into what you are doing when you're in the AMBO, and it will come through for the congregation. So again, from a practical, let me go from that sort of theoretical and sort of deep meditative kind of thought process thing to the practical. Once you've selected the psalm, let Karen or Michael and I know which version it is that you'd like to proclaim, and make sure that you're ready when you come in, okay? When you get there on the day of the Mass, you have an opportunity to run through with us the responsorial psalm, any of the hymns that you have a question about, and so forth. But just a reminder that that is not, that half an hour before the Mass is not the time to learn the responsorial psalm or any of the hymns that you have a question about, okay? We try to provide you with the resources, especially with regards to the hymn. The hymns, every one of the hymns has a link to it on the Google Drive. So please take the time to come in so that you're prepared when you come in. When you, after the first reading, when you go to the AMBO, reverencing the altar on the way, take with you just one binder or the book, if you have a hymnal that it's in or something like that. You don't want to walk over with pieces of paper in your hands. That's just not a great look. If you do have copies or something of the music, just get them into a binder. That'll look very nice. You can sort of keep that in your hands as you go over to the AMBO and back. Generally speaking, and I'm sure Michael will applaud this, normally you should not have to adjust the microphone when you get there. As you can tell, this microphone picks up pretty well. So when I slide to the side, I may move a little bit, right? It may change a little bit, but it's really not too bad. You do not need to be here at any of our churches. I think this probably drives the live streamers crazy. If you do need to move it, just move it gently into position. It's not a joystick, okay? So just be careful with it. They will break. And as Michelle Pryor found out one Good Friday, they do sometimes fall out of these holders when you move them too much. So just be aware of that. As that musical introduction begins, get your music opened and prepare to intone. Get yourself mentally prepared and make some eye contact with that congregation and let them know that you're expecting a lot from them. The reality of it is that you should know the refrain of the psalm well enough to sing it without looking down at your music. You may reference it, but realistically, by that point, you should know your refrain well enough to be able to sing it while making some sustained eye contact with the congregation. If the direct eye contact makes you uncomfortable, look over their heads at the back wall. That's fine also, okay? It is nice if you can begin by just proclaiming that psalm refrain to them without your head down looking at your music, okay? And then when it's their turn, realistically, like even this is sufficient to bring them in. They all know when to sing. Trust me that they know when to sing. When you finish up intoning that psalm and then it wraps around and starts over again, they get it. They really don't need, or worse yet, touchdown in order for them to be able to sing. They really do get it, okay? And you know that because if you've had Deacon Herb at Mass, when he sings, Kyrie eleison, you will never see Deacon Herb go, right? And yet they know. Okay? Oh, sorry. Christe eleison. Okay. All right. So my point is that there are ways, and they really do know what they're supposed to be doing. And so realistically, just allow them to do it without the unnecessary hand waving and all that stuff. They'll get it. Proclaim that first verse, and then when they come back for that, maybe you still need to sing with them again, but maybe it's a little bit softer than it was the first time, and a little bit softer now, and a little bit softer now. Okay. Sorry, that just came to me. That wasn't planned. I may edit that. But realistically, as you loop around after every one of these verses, the congregation is getting more confident in their response. And so that dialogue is then created of you singing, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all my being, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not his benefits." And then you look back up and the congregation responds with, "The Lord is kind and merciful," or whatever the responsorial psalm was that you intoned for them, okay? Give them that voice and allow them to fully and actively participate in the liturgy. Don't take their role for them. I'll just, as a little bit of an aside, sometimes at very small funeral masses, that the dialogue breaks down. And Melissa and Cheryl and Sean and I and others who have cantors at funerals are aware that sometimes the priest says, "The Lord be with you." And that happens. And we in the leadership roles have to go, "And also with you, and with your spirit," right? Because otherwise the dialogue stops, right? And so in our congregations, we're looking at a minimum of 150 people now at our masses on the weekends, and they know how to respond. So give them that opportunity. Proclaim the first verse, proclaim the second verse, allow your voice to sort of drift away a little bit. And again, if you're in a church where you're not going to fall off the steps, you are welcome to just take a step back. I guess at St. Anselm you have to be careful too, because Karen, is it one step up at St. Anselm? Yeah, so you have to be careful there as well. I think the ambo is a little bit bigger there, so you have a little bit of space to back up if you wanted to be able to sing. But really, again, just do your best to give them that opportunity. I always have felt people hate a vacuum. They will sort of rush to fill a vacuum. So if you're not singing for them, they'll step into that role, maybe even a little bit more, because people hate that the void. Okay. And then once you've finished proclaiming that responsorial psalm, of course, then you come back over, reverence the altar again, and go back to your seat, and then mentally prepare for the gospel acclamation that's coming. And again, a lot of notes and things are included in the packets that Melissa has. So what questions or comments or thoughts do you have about any of this that we've talked about proclaiming the psalm? Didn't I just say people hate a vacuum? Okay. Yeah, Dave.
So protocol in each church is a little different, but in St. A's, for example, since the altar is a couple steps up, what is the appropriate place to bow before the altar? Before you go up the steps, the altar level, or down at the lower level?
That's a great question. Michael? Yeah, I think actually that's actually it too. I was actually going to have you watch the priests when they come in at the next mass, but I'm pretty sure they actually bow at the bottom of the steps before they come up, don't they? Yeah, I
I think there's no wrong answer to this one.
I actually think I do it both ways. Going up, I stay down. When I come off after the response, I bow just up and go down the step. So that's why I ask.
You know, that's a really good question, Dave. And I can check with our clergy team to see if it matters. If it matters, I'll let you know. And if it doesn't matter, you know. Sorry, Terry, did you?
At the Cantor of St. Anselm's, I think there's a railing
Yeah.
and then go over to the rear leg and help myself.
And as you're bowing, you're saying a little prayer to get up the steps and back down, right? Yeah, it's a good question. Any comments or questions or anything about things? Okay. Again, a lot of things in the packet, there's some commentary about the fact that all 4 of our churches are physically different, and so they have to be handled a little bit differently. One of the things that I keep mentioning to you is about allowing the congregation to find its voice. And I know one of the concerns that many of you have when you're cantering a live-streamed Mass is that what do you do in that instance, right? Because if you're singing the opening hymn, the congregation may be singing around you, but the people at home can't necessarily hear the congregation singing. We're actually working on that, particularly at St. John Fisher when you're standing in the ambo to the right of it along the wall, there's a microphone there that picks up the congregation for good or bad. And so I'm going to continue to work on that over time, both here and there. That's what these microphones are designed to do. Here at St. Maurice, they pick up the choir, they pick up the organ, and I'm actually going to set one up somewhere that hopefully will pick up congregational participation as well, so that the folks on the live stream also know that that our congregation is active and fully participating in the liturgy. So my advice to you when you're cantering at one of those Masses, don't really let it change your approach to cantering. Just do what you know that you need to do. Do what you can do to facilitate that full and active participation, and allow the congregation to sort of come through even on the live stream. Okay?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
On the responsorial song, is it okay to completely drop out during the actual refrain?
I would, if they're, we have on the third Sunday of Lent, the responsorial psalm is in fact we just sang it. The Lord is kind and merciful, right? We just had that very recently. And if you're doing the Hagen, well, maybe we didn't, but if you're doing the Hagen, if you're doing something that's really familiar, and even one of the simpler, like the respond and acclaim ones, those refrains are very learnable very quickly. And so, yes, I would feel very comfortable just dropping out entirely if you feel that the congregation is coming in. Now, what I would say to you is, if I'm using like Marty Hagen's The Lord is Kind and Merciful, I might go, the Lord. Okay, maybe not weave back and forth, but
We just say everybody's.
touchdown. The ultimate cantor, right up there, right? Yeah, okay, everybody now, okay? So if you have any other questions, or if anything comes up, and also the thing that I want to talk to you about is that going forward, I've tried really to give you resources that I think are helpful to you in your preparation. Because look, we have one cantor practice a month, assuming that everything goes well, right? 2 opportunities on the same day, but we have one cantor practice a month, and I have never made that mandatory for you. What I ask in return is that you come to Mass prepared, right? And I this is not a complaint, because like folks really do the work and really do come in prepared for Mass, and Karen is back there nodding emphatically that is true. And that's not my point. But I want to make sure that you have the resources that you need in order to come feeling totally prepared. So if there's something that comes to mind right now, let me know either right now or let me know after we're done here. You can always send me an email. If there are things that you find somewhere that's like, hey, I found this resource and it could be really helpful. Or if you feel that it would be helpful to have links to the weekly readings, or anything else that you feel that would help you in your preparation for proclaiming the word in song, please let me know, because we really do want to try to provide as much as we can, so that, because I recognize, as Sandy said, and it's interesting because Sandy has been a lector for 35 years, and yet nerves got you tonight, coming up for public speaking. Getting in this Cantor podium or getting up in the AMBO or climbing Mount St. Fisher, it's scary out there. And so if you can come in with that confidence, knowing that you fully prepared, then you have the best opportunity to really proclaim the word the way that we're talking about. So please don't ever hesitate to ask for resources or ask for something. And if you don't get worship, if the music lists aren't coming out early enough or you need something, just stay on me about that, because sometimes I'm a little deadline oriented. And so sometimes the things, Natalie needs them on a certain day, so darn, that's when they get done, So don't hesitate to ask for the things that you feel will make you successful, okay? Karen, would you mind coming back up?
No, you don't mind, or
So again, on your way out tonight, first of all, I do want to thank you all for coming this evening. It's so wonderful to see so many of you. I appreciate your attentiveness and your contributions to the conversation. Again, thank you to Michael and to Karen and to Sandy for all of their contributions to this evening. Thank you also to Melissa for, I'm not even going to go into all the stuff that Melissa's helped with this. But also, please make sure that you see her on the way out to get that updated packet on the way out. And if anything comes up, any questions or anything about the things that you read in there, just let me know. And for those of you who are watching on the live stream, please send me an email now to let me know that you watched. And everybody that's here, could you please stand? And we're going to go to page 8 in the bulletin again and sing verse number 4 of Led by the Spirit. Drive safely, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks.